After being announced almost 2 years ago at E3 2011, the new Tomb Raider is finally here today, March 5th, 2013. I'm Retro Inception from the Xbox division of Clan Retro, and I'm here to bring you your video review of Tomb Raider 2013. Seeing as how this is our first video review, I'd like to talk to you guys about how I plan to make my reviews. Now, the way I do it doesn't necessarily have to be consistent with the way everyone else does it, so you might see a review in a different format or presented in a different style each time you see a game review. The way I plan to do it is by taking my review and putting it up into a few different categories, such as gameplay, visuals, writing, lasting appeal, and then a final verdict. To start off, let's talk about gameplay, including the combat, cover system, and exploration aspect of the game.
This is the good stuff. Hey, if you get drunk, the enforcers will cut your throat.
I can hold my liquor as long as you hold your tongue.
Heard they picked up some recruits from the new wreck.
Only a few. Most of them resist.
What the hell?
The combat with the bow and arrow and the weapons is really solid, but what makes it so good is the cover system that Crystal Dynamics has implanted into this game. When Lara approaches cover, she really just moves into it. You don't have to tap a button, and it makes the action flow really, really well. The game's also quite unique. You mainly use your bow and arrows and an axe to interact with the environment for a while until you get guns, so it's not like your typical average shoot-everything game. You have to use these primal weapons for a bit, which is nice. And I think Tomb Raider's combat on the whole really succeeds because, I mean, you get access to these big guns like shotguns and assault rifles, but you still want to use your bow and arrow so much more than those guns because it's what you learned how to fight with. And on that level, I think it really succeeds with just making the desperation and primal instinct of the game come through, which is great. And while the combat is really good, it flows together really well, and it makes the game really well paced and exciting, there are three things that kind of detract from the overall experience, and one of them is definitely more glaring than the other two. The one that's most glaring is the bizarre use of QuickTime. And it's 2013 now, you don't really see QuickTime implemented that much in games, but for some reason Crystal Dynamics really decided to use it a lot, especially in the beginning of the game. Like I said, in the beginning of the game there are a lot of very cool scripted events when you're buried under this cave, and a lot of different plot points happen. That's why I'm not showing it here because it would kind of spoil. But you have to access these events through QuickTime, and it kind of takes you out of the experience of like trying to survive and being bare-boned and doing whatever you can to get out. And I thought that was kind of weird, but it really dissipates towards the middle and end of the game, so you can tell that Crystal Dynamics realized they were screwing up. Maybe either didn't have time or were too lazy to go back and fix it. Regardless, it goes away from the middle to the end, so it doesn't completely ruin the thing, but it's a weird inconvenience in the beginning. Lara is basically indestructible. She can be stabbed, shot, she can fall off of a cliff and not die, and she hardly ever really rests. There are a few cutscenes where she sits down for maybe 3 minutes, and I could see this being more of a pet peeve than a main problem, but it's just kind of odd seeing as how Crystal Dynamics was going for a realistic approach to this game. Now, my final problem is kind of something with its presentation that interrupts the gameplay, and it's these really weird lens flares that you can see on the screen here, and they show up in different colors. Like, for example, they're white if there's a ton of water, and they're red and orange if you stab like a deer or something like that. And they're not really game breaking, but they're fairly annoying if you're trying to like scale across a mountain and you've got all these stupid dots showing up on your screen. It really kind of started to piss me off. Again though, it's a fairly small problem that doesn't really detract from the overall gameplay experience. Another really solid thing about this game definitely has to be its action set pieces. There are a lot of really, really cool ones just like this. Now, for this game, I don't really want to talk about visuals and graphics that much. I will on other games that definitely make the graphics a focus of what they're putting their effort into. But this game, I didn't really care about the graphics. You can tell Crystal Dynamics doesn't really want you to focus on the graphics, and they are really good. They're not the best you could see on a Xbox 360 game in 2013, but they're good, they're serviceable, and they make the action look solid. And what I really give Crystal Dynamics a lot of credit for is even during their massive action set pieces, their frame rate never dips or drops, and it really keeps you in the experience and feeling like you're trying to survive. Now let's talk about the writing of Tomb Raider.
Sorry.
The writing in Tomb Raider is overall fairly solid, but it stumbles at times from, yet again, a few odd design decisions. Like I said earlier, it's weird that Lara is indestructible and she's a beginning archaeologist with no field experience, but what's really weird is Crystal Dynamics dedicates a very long and lengthy cutscene to Lara's first killing of a human being, and then immediately after that, she has absolutely no problem just tearing shit up and killing hundreds upon hundreds of soldiers and pirates and rebels with absolutely no remorse, and it kind of just completely contradicts everything the game tries to set up before that first kill. And I know this is my first review, so you guys probably don't know if I do spoilers or not. I'm going to try and not do spoilers, and I will make a notification if there is a spoiler in the review so you will know before you watch. For this game, I don't really want to talk about any kind of spoilers. The ending is good. I'm not going to talk about what happens. It sets up definitely a new trilogy or more than that for the new Lara from Crystal Dynamics. But I really don't have a whole lot to say about it other than that. Now let's talk about replay value and multiplayer. So Tomb Raider isn't really the best game in terms of replayability. There's not a whole lot to look for in terms of uh, collecting stuff. It doesn't really motivate you to go back and play the game a bunch of times to look for different things. However, the game is pretty long. It's 12 to 15 hours, so you definitely have a lot of stuff to do. It's just not really worth going back and playing. However, it's very much worth the $60 price tag for a 12 to 15 hour game. That's fairly long. Now, what Tomb Raider's biggest problem really is what I'm showing right here, and that's the multiplayer. It wasn't lazily done. I can tell there was some solid effort put into it. It's just not very interesting. It feels a lot like Uncharted's multiplayer, which is barely okay in my opinion to begin with. And it just further proves that the game could have been fine with only its single player campaign. It didn't really need a multiplayer component, but I'm not really going to bag on it too hard because it's not that it was lazily made. There's just not a whole lot in it that's very interesting. Now let's move on to the final verdict for Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider is the first great game I've played this year, despite its lackluster multiplayer. You really shouldn't take the multiplayer into consideration when thinking about buying this game though, because it really doesn't do anything to harm the overall package. The game has been about the single player since the day it was announced, and the single player follows through, which is what's most important. At 12 to 15 hours long, it's one of the best campaigns I've had the pleasure of playing in quite some time, and one of the first games I've felt is actually worth my $60 in maybe 2 years. I really recommend Tomb Raider to you guys, and if you have the money, you should definitely pick it up, and that's why I'm giving it a 93 out of 100. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to Clan Retro's page, and feel free to message me, Retro Inception, on Xbox Live anytime you want with any questions, comments, or concerns. Also, feel free to email clanretro@gmail.com anytime you like. This is Retro Inception, signing off.